Chosen one, take a slow breath with me before we go any further. Whatever decision has been circling your mind lately, pause it. Don't solve it. Don't justify it. Don't defend it. Just let it sit there for a moment without touching it. Because the very fact that you're listening to this right now isn't random. There's something you've been trying to convince yourself is right. A relationship that seems to check every box. An offer that looks like the breakthrough you prayed for. An opportunity that feels almost too perfect to question. And yet, something inside you has not been calm. On the surface, everything makes sense. Your logical mind can build a strong case. You can list the benefits. You can explain why this is the answer. You can even frame it spiritually. But your body is telling a different story. When you imagine saying yes, your chest tightens instead of expanding. Your stomach twists instead of settling. Your thoughts speed up instead of becoming clear. That is not fear of success. That is not overthinking. That is discernment trying to break through the noise. There is a difference between nervous excitement and spiritual warning. Excitement may feel intense, but it carries anticipation. A warning feels heavy, restrictive, pressured, urgent in the wrong way. Right now, I want you to stop analyzing the situation and instead notice what happens in your body when you picture committing to it. Do you feel grounded? Or do you feel like you're bracing? Because your nervous system rarely lies. It reacts long before your mind catches up. The truth is, not every open door is a divine invitation. Some doors are distractions dressed like destiny. Some opportunities are detours designed to pull you off course just before you reach alignment. And the most dangerous ones don't look dark. They look desirable. They mirror your prayers. They echo your loneliness. They target your fatigue. When you've been waiting a long time for relief, even something slightly off can start to look like salvation. That's where the real battle begins. You've been in a long season of endurance. You've been patient. You've worked on yourself. You've turned down things that weren't aligned. You've said no when it hurt. And now something appears that feels like compensation for all that waiting. Of course you want it to be right. Of course you want it to be the answer. But wanting something badly doesn't make it safe. Sometimes the biggest traps are built from your own unmet desires. Think about it carefully. What have you been craving most lately? Security, affection, recognition, financial breathing room, partnership. Now look at the opportunity in front of you. Does it seem custom built to soothe that exact ache? That's not coincidence. The more exhausted you are, the easier it is to confuse relief with alignment. When you're dehydrated in the desert, even contaminated water looks worth the risk. But contaminated water still poisons you. There's a pattern most people don't talk about. Major distractions often show up right before major breakthroughs. Not years before. Not randomly. But right at the edge of transition. When you're almost at the next level, the pressure intensifies. Not because you're failing, but because you're close. You don't tempt someone who's far from their purpose with something extraordinary. You tempt them when they're about to step into it. That's why this feels so convincing. It matches your growth. It aligns with your vocabulary. It sounds spiritually mature. It feels emotionally intelligent. But here's the real question: does it produce peace? Not surface-level calm. Not, I can talk myself into this. I mean deep, anchored peace. The kind where you don't need to explain it to yourself. The kind that doesn't require mental gymnastics. The kind that doesn't wake you up at 2 a.m. with silent doubts. Real alignment does not require you to override your instincts. It doesn't demand urgency. It doesn't collapse if you ask for time. Pressure is one of the clearest warning signs you can watch for. If something is truly meant for you, it will withstand reflection. If someone genuinely values you, they won't rush you into commitment. If an opportunity is aligned, it won't punish you for taking space to evaluate it. Manipulation always hides inside urgency. Decide now. Don't overthink. You might miss out. You're just scared. Notice how those statements bypass your peace and appeal to your fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of being alone. Fear of staying stuck. Fear of losing your chance. And when fear drives the decision, the outcome rarely brings stability. Let's be honest about something deeper. Part of you isn't just confused. Part of you is tired. You're tired of waiting. Tired of holding standards. Tired of being patient while watching others move forward. Tired of doing the right thing and not seeing immediate reward. That fatigue can distort discernment. It can make compromise feel reasonable. It can make close enough feel acceptable. It can whisper, maybe this is as good as it gets. But exhaustion does not mean abandonment. Delay does not mean denial. And loneliness does not mean you should lower your standards. There's a reason the discomfort inside you hasn't disappeared, even after all the mental justification. Your spirit does not negotiate with red flags. It doesn't soften warnings just because you're tired. It doesn't go silent because you want something badly. If anything, the more perfect it looks, the louder the internal resistance becomes. Because deception rarely comes dressed as destruction. It comes dressed as opportunity. The real challenge isn't identifying that something feels off. It's accepting that walking away might require more courage than staying. Staying allows you to hold on to hope. Walking away requires trust. Trust that something better exists. Trust that timing matters. Trust that what's truly aligned won't demand compromise. Right now, imagine the scenario you're considering. See it clearly. Don't filter it. Now imagine choosing it. Picture signing the paper, sending the text, making the commitment, saying yes. Notice what happens in your body. Does your breath deepen? Or does it shorten? Does your chest expand? Or does it constrict? Your body is responding before your mind can spin a story. There's wisdom in that. We often override it because we've been conditioned to prioritize logic over intuition. But intuition isn't irrational. It's pattern recognition happening faster than conscious thought. It integrates memory, emotion, subtle cues, and internal alignment all at once. When it signals discomfort, it's not trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you. You don't need mystical language to understand this. You just need honesty. If you have to repeatedly convince yourself that something is right, that's information. If you feel relief when you imagine walking away, that's information. If you feel dread when you imagine committing, that's information. Alignment feels steady. It might be new. It might stretch you. But it doesn't feel like you're betraying yourself. One of the most powerful questions you can ask right now is simple. If I weren't afraid of being alone, broke, or behind, would I still choose this? Remove the fear. Remove the scarcity. Remove the timeline pressure. With all that gone, does this still feel aligned? Or does it only feel necessary because you're afraid there won't be another option? There will always be another option, but there won't always be another version of you with this level of awareness. You've grown. You've matured. You've healed in ways you didn't think possible. The opportunity in front of you must match that growth, not pull you back into an older version of yourself. That's another key sign. Does this require you to shrink? To soften boundaries you worked hard to build? To ignore instincts you fought to trust? To re-enter dynamics you already outgrew? Progress should not demand regression. You should not have to abandon your evolution to maintain a blessing. If it's truly aligned, it will meet you at your current level of integrity. It will honor your standards. It will respect your pace. And most importantly, it will not require you to silence yourself. You don't need to make the final decision in this moment. But you do need to stop pretending the discomfort isn't there. Stop calling anxiety excitement. Stop calling pressure momentum. Stop calling red flags tests. You are not crazy for hesitating. You are not self-sabotaging for pausing. You are not ungrateful for questioning. You are paying attention. And that alone might be the reason you were guided here. Stay with that awareness. Don't rush. Let the noise settle. In the next section, we're going to go deeper into why this kind of trap feels so convincing and why your clarity may have felt foggy lately in the first place. Now let's go deeper, because the real danger isn't just the opportunity in front of you. The real danger is how convincing it feels. If it looked obviously wrong, you wouldn't be struggling. If it felt clearly toxic, you would have walked away already. If it triggered obvious red flags, your mind wouldn't be negotiating with your intuition. But this is different. This feels aligned almost. It feels mature. It feels spiritual. It feels like growth. And that's exactly why it's confusing you. Here's what most people don't realize: deception evolves as you evolve. When you were less aware, the traps were obvious. They came with chaos, drama, instability. You could see the dysfunction clearly. But now you've grown, you've healed. You've raised your standards. So the distractions have become more sophisticated. They no longer appeal to your trauma. They appeal to your progress. They don't show up looking reckless. They show up looking responsible. They don't feel chaotic. They feel calm on the surface. But underneath that calm is something slightly off. And the reason it feels so convincing right now has less to do with the situation itself and more to do with your internal state. You've been in a season of waiting, and waiting changes people. It humbles you. It stretches you. It forces you to confront yourself. But it also exhausts you. There is a quiet fatigue that comes from doing everything right and not seeing immediate reward, from saying no when it hurts, from walking away when it would have been easier to stay, from holding standards when settling would have brought temporary relief. That kind of integrity is powerful, but it's also draining. And when you're drained, your clarity can become foggy, not because you've lost wisdom, but because your nervous system is tired. When we are tired, we crave relief more than alignment. We crave certainty more than discernment. We crave movement more than accuracy. And that's where this opportunity steps in. It offers movement. It offers change. It offers something tangible after a long season of invisible growth. It whispers, finally, Finally, someone sees you. Finally, something is shifting. Finally, you're not stuck. And that word, finally, can override caution, because it feels like closure to the waiting. But here's something important. Relief and alignment are not the same thing. Relief feels immediate. Alignment feels steady. Relief rushes in and temporarily quiets your anxiety. Alignment settles in and strengthens your peace. If something feels like it's solving your loneliness, your financial stress, your impatience, or your insecurity all at once, that's not necessarily destiny. That's your unmet needs being activated. There is a psychological principle at play here. When we've been deprived of something for a long time, affection, recognition, stability, our brain becomes hyper, focused on opportunities that promise it. It's not weakness, it's biology. Scarcity heightens desire, and heightened desire lowers discernment. If you've been craving partnership, the first emotionally intelligent person who shows up can feel like the one. If you've been craving financial breakthrough, the first offer that exceeds your current situation can feel like divine intervention. If you've been craving validation, the first person who deeply understands you can feel like a soulmate. But craving something does not make the first version of it correct. This is where many people step into misalignment. Not because they're foolish, but because they're hungry. And hunger distorts perception. When you're starving, you don't analyze ingredients, you just eat. But if what you consume is unhealthy, the damage shows up later. The reason this feels so spiritually confusing is because it mirrors your prayers. It sounds like what you asked for. It looks like what you imagined. But here's the key distinction. Sometimes you receive a test that looks like the promise, to see if you will settle for resemblance instead of fulfillment. Resemblance can be dangerous. It's close enough to convince you, but not aligned enough to sustain you. And deep down, your body knows the difference. That's why you feel the tension. You're standing between relief and alignment. Relief says, take it. It's good enough. Alignment says, wait. Something is slightly off. The fog you've been feeling lately isn't accidental either. When you are on the edge of a breakthrough, your mind can become louder. Old doubts resurface. Old fears whisper again. Not because you're regressing, but because your nervous system senses change. Change triggers uncertainty, and uncertainty can feel like anxiety. The problem is, anxiety about growth feels very different from anxiety about misalignment. Growth anxiety feels expansive underneath the discomfort. Misalignment anxiety feels constricting. Growth says, this is new, but it feels right. Misalignment says, this is shiny, but something is wrong. You have to get very honest with yourself here. Is your discomfort coming from stretching into something higher, or shrinking into something familiar? Because sometimes what feels safe is actually a return to an old pattern. Let's talk about patterns. Your brain is wired for familiarity, even if the familiar is dysfunctional. If you've experienced inconsistent affection before, consistent but slightly distant affection might feel normal. If you've experienced instability before, controlled instability might feel acceptable. If you've had to prove yourself in the past, an opportunity that makes you overextend might feel like ambition. But growth means your nervous system has to recalibrate. Healthy can feel boring at first. Peace can feel unfamiliar. Stability can feel strange. And ironically, drama can feel exciting. So you have to ask yourself something powerful. Does this feel aligned because it's healthy, or because it feels familiar? There's another layer: timing. When something appears right as you're emotionally vulnerable, it carries extra weight. If you've just experienced disappointment, loss, rejection, or stagnation, your defenses are lower. You're more open, more hopeful, more willing to believe. And that openness is beautiful, but it must be paired with discernment. Because not everything that arrives during vulnerability is meant to stay. Some things arrive to reveal what you still need to heal. Others arrive to see if you've truly integrated the lessons you claim to have learned. That's why this moment feels so pivotal. It's not just about the opportunity. It's about who you are becoming. Will you choose from fear or from self-trust? Will you choose from urgency or from clarity? Will you choose from exhaustion or from integrity? Here's something subtle but important. When something is aligned, you don't feel like you're bargaining with yourself. You don't create long mental speeches to justify it. You don't need to defend it to your intuition. It doesn't require constant reassurance. It may still require courage, but it doesn't require self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is the quiet compromise you make when you ignore what you know. It's when you silence your inner voice because you're tired of waiting. It's when you override your boundaries because you're afraid of losing the chance. It's when you tell yourself, "I can handle it," even though you already see the red flags. You didn't work this hard on yourself just to abandon your discernment at the final stretch. And that's what this feels like. The final stretch before something real shifts. Distractions intensify near transitions. Because if you can be pulled off course now, you delay the breakthrough. If you settle now, you reset the lesson. If you compromise now, you repeat the cycle. And the reason it feels foggy is because your old self and your new self are negotiating. Your old self says, "This is good enough." Your new self says, "We deserve better." Your old self fears missing out. Your new self trusts timing. Your old self wants relief. Your new self wants alignment. And the tension between those two identities creates confusion. But confusion is not a sign you're lost. It's a sign you're choosing consciously instead of impulsively. That is growth. So here's what I want you to do. Stop trying to decide from your head alone. Instead, zoom out. Imagine yourself 6 months from now. You chose this opportunity. How do you feel? Not in fantasy. In reality, do you feel expanded or drained? Do you feel proud or resigned? Now imagine you walked away. You said no. You trusted the discomfort. How do you feel 6 months later? Regretful or relieved? One of those scenarios likely brings subtle peace, even if it includes temporary uncertainty. Pay attention to that. Because the trap only feels convincing when you're looking at it from today's exhaustion. When you look at it from tomorrow's clarity, it often becomes obvious. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not forgotten. The fact that you can sense something is off means your discernment is active, and that is protection. The fog will clear, but only if you refuse to rush through it. In the next section, we're going to explore the difference between fear-based hesitation and true intuitive warning, so you can finally separate anxiety from discernment with confidence. Now we're entering the most important layer of this entire message. Because at this point, you might be asking yourself something very honest. What if this is just fear? What if I'm sabotaging something good? What if I'm running from growth? And that question matters, because not every hesitation is wisdom, but not every bold move is courage either. There is a difference between fear-based avoidance and intuitive warning, and if you don't learn to separate them, you will either run from blessings or walk directly into lessons you didn't need to repeat. Let's slow this down. Fear is loud. Discernment is quiet. Fear panics. Discernment observes. Fear says, "What if this goes wrong?" Discernment says, "Something doesn't sit right." Fear imagines catastrophic outcomes. Discernment notices subtle inconsistencies. Fear feels chaotic in your mind. Discernment feels steady in your body. This is where you have to become deeply honest with yourself. When you think about this opportunity, what exactly are you afraid of? Are you afraid of being seen at a higher level? Taking responsibility for something bigger? Succeeding beyond your comfort zone? Or are you uneasy because the timing feels pressured? The energy feels slightly off. The words don't match the actions. Your peace disappears when you imagine committing. Fear of growth still carries expansion underneath it. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff before jumping into something new, scary, but thrilling. Intuitive warning feels like walking into a room where the lights are dim and something feels wrong, even if you can't explain why. One stretches you, the other constricts you. That's the key. Expansion vs contraction. Let's go deeper into the body. Your body reacts before your mind creates stories. If it's growth-based fear, your breath may be fast, but your chest still feels open. You feel nervous, but there's excitement under it. You imagine succeeding and it feels possible, even if scary. After the initial fear passes, you feel stronger. If it's misalignment, your stomach tightens, your shoulders tense, your jaw clenches. You replay the situation over and over, trying to convince yourself. You feel relief when imagining backing out. Relief is a powerful indicator. If the thought of saying no brings a subtle wave of peace, even if it also brings uncertainty, that matters. If the thought of saying yes brings pressure, heaviness, or dread, that matters too. Now let's address self-sabotage. Self-sabotage usually comes from unworthiness. It sounds like, "I don't deserve this. I'm not ready. I'll probably mess this up. They'll eventually see I'm not good enough." But that's not what you're describing internally. You're not saying, "I can't handle it." You're saying, "Something feels off." That's different. Self-sabotage attacks your ability. Discernment questions the situation. Self-sabotage is rooted in insecurity. Discernment is rooted in awareness. One shrinks you, the other protects you. Another important distinction: growth may challenge your comfort, but it does not violate your values. If moving forward requires you to compromise your boundaries, ignore inconsistencies, silence your intuition, accept treatment that feels slightly disrespectful, move faster than your nervous system can handle, that's not growth. That's override. And override always comes with a cost. Here's something many people misunderstand. Alignment does not mean zero fear. It means fear is not in control. When something is aligned, you may still feel butterflies. You may still feel nervous. You may still question your readiness. But underneath all of that, there is a grounded sense of yes. You don't have to force it. You don't have to argue with yourself. You don't feel like you're betraying your own evolution. You feel like you're stepping into it. If you need constant reassurance to proceed, that's information. If you need other people to convince you, that's information. If you're searching for validation instead of feeling anchored, that's information. Now let's talk about urgency again. Fear-based hesitation often avoids deadlines. Discernment often resists pressure. If someone or something is pushing you to decide quickly, no or never, and your body is asking for space, that is not cowardice. That is self-trust trying to speak. Healthy opportunities can withstand time. Healthy relationships can withstand questions. Healthy contracts can withstand review. Manipulation collapses under scrutiny, and if slowing down causes tension, anger, or withdrawal from the other side, that reveals more than words ever could. Let's explore another layer: repetition. Ask yourself, have I felt this feeling before? Not the excitement, the unease. Have I ignored this exact sensation in the past? If yes, what happened? Patterns repeat until awareness interrupts them. Sometimes what feels like a new opportunity is just an upgraded version of an old lesson. More polished, more subtle, more aligned with your growth, but carrying the same core dynamic. Maybe in the past you ignored small red flags, a rationalized behavior, a move too fast, the compromised boundaries for connection, and accepted almost instead of aligned. And maybe now the pattern is disguised. The person seems more emotionally aware. The offer seems more stable. The situation looks healthier, but the subtle unease feels familiar. That familiarity deserves attention. Your intuition doesn't need dramatic evidence. It works through micro-signals. Tone shifts, energy inconsistencies, tiny misalignments between words and actions. Pressure masked as enthusiasm. Affection that feels slightly conditional. Opportunities that feel almost right, but not fully settled. The mind wants proof. Intuition works with pattern recognition. You may not be able to articulate exactly what's wrong, but your system is calculating something faster than logic. And here's a truth that may hit deeply. Sometimes the reason you're confused is because you're trying to find a logical reason to justify a spiritual no. You want evidence. You want something concrete. You want a visible red flag. But misalignment doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. And if you ignore whispers, eventually it has to shout. Discernment is quiet at first. Disaster is loud later. That's why pausing now is power. There's another important angle. Fear is future-based. It imagines what might go wrong. Discernment is present-based. It notices what already feels off. Fear says, what if I fail? Discernment says, this doesn't feel steady. Fear is about imagined outcomes. Discernment is about current alignment. So ask yourself clearly, is my discomfort about something that hasn't happened yet? Or is it about something I'm already sensing now? If it's already present, already in the tone, the pacing, the energy, that's not projection. That's perception. Let's bring this home in a grounded way. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture saying yes. Now sit with it for 20 seconds. Notice your breath. Notice your posture. Notice the emotional tone in your chest. Now picture saying no. Sit with that for 20 seconds. Notice again. One of those choices likely feels lighter. Not easier, lighter. Clarity is rarely dramatic, it's subtle. It's quiet, it's a small internal nod. And sometimes clarity doesn't say, this is wrong. It simply says, This is not it. And not it is enough. You do not need catastrophe to justify walking away. You do not need betrayal to validate hesitation. You do not need visible dysfunction to honor intuition. You are allowed to choose based on alignment alone. That is maturity. That is growth. That is self-trust. And here is the deeper truth. When you've done the work on yourself, the universe stops teaching through pain and starts teaching through nudges. This may just be a nudge, a subtle redirect, a quiet protection, not because something terrible would happen immediately, but because long-term, it would pull you slightly off course. And when you are close to breakthrough, even slight misalignment matters. You are not overthinking. You are not dramatic. You are not afraid of success. You are standing at a crossroads between who you were and who you are becoming. And the choice you make now either reinforces your self-trust or weakens it. In the next section, we're going to explore what happens when you choose alignment over urgency and why walking away from almost is often the doorway to the real thing. Now we arrive at the turning point. This is the moment where everything shifts. Because awareness alone is not transformation. You can recognize the red flags. You can understand the difference between fear and discernment. You can see the subtle misalignment. But the real test is what you do next. Do you honor what you know? Or do you override it one more time? This is where urgency becomes the final temptation. Urgency is powerful because it creates artificial scarcity. It whispers, "This might not come again. You're running out of time. If you don't move now, you'll regret it." And when you've waited a long time for something to shift, urgency feels intoxicating. Movement feels better than stagnation. Action feels better than uncertainty. Even the wrong step can feel relieving if you've been standing still too long. But here's the truth that changes everything. Alignment never requires panic. What is meant for you does not collapse under reflection. What is truly yours does not expire because you ask for clarity. What is aligned with your evolution will respect your pace. If something demands immediate commitment to survive, it was fragile to begin with. Strong foundations do not fear scrutiny. Real connection does not fear questions. Authentic opportunity does not fear patience. So why does urgency feel so loud right now? Because you are close. Close to breakthrough. Close to stability. Close to something real. And when you are close to receiving something aligned, distractions intensify. Not to destroy you, but to test your standards. Because standards are easy to speak about in theory. They are harder to uphold when something almost perfect appears. Almost is seductive, almost right, almost aligned, almost everything you prayed for, but almost still requires compromise. And compromise at the edge of breakthrough resets the cycle. This is the deeper layer most people never see. When you settle for almost, you signal to yourself that you don't fully trust your worth. You teach your nervous system that urgency outranks peace. You reinforce the belief that something slightly off is better than nothing at all. And every time you override your discernment, your inner voice grows quieter. Self-trust erodes slowly, not dramatically, quietly. And the cost isn't immediate disaster. It's subtle misalignment that compounds over time. Let's explore what choosing alignment actually looks like. It looks like pausing when everything inside you wants to rush. It looks like saying, "I need time," even if the other person becomes uncomfortable. It looks like reading the contract again. It looks like asking one more question. It looks like listening to your body instead of the hype. It looks like walking away from something good because you know something better exists. That is not arrogance. That is integration. You didn't do all this inner work just to abandon it at the final stretch. Think about who you were 2 years ago. You might have jumped in quickly. You might have ignored the small discomfort. You might have said yes just to avoid being alone or stuck. But you are not that version anymore. Growth means your nervous system has changed. Your tolerance has shifted. Your standards have risen. So when something feels slightly off now, it hits differently. That discomfort isn't weakness, it's refinement, and refinement requires patience. Let's talk about the fear of walking away, because that's the real challenge here. When you imagine saying no, what scares you most? Is it the silence that follows? The possibility that nothing better appears immediately? Of the discomfort of explaining your decision? The doubt of, what if I was wrong? Those fears are valid. But here's the hidden truth. Saying no to misalignment creates space. And space is uncomfortable at first. Space feels empty. It feels uncertain. It feels like you've removed something without replacing it. But space is where alignment enters. You cannot receive something fully aligned while clinging to something almost. Your hands must be open. And open hands cannot hold onto distractions. There's a powerful shift that happens when you choose alignment over urgency. You send a signal, not just outward, but inward. You tell yourself, my peace matters. My intuition is valid. I trust my timing. I am not desperate. I am not behind. That internal shift changes your entire frequency, because desperation attracts compromise. Confidence attracts alignment. When you walk away from almost, you don't lose. You upgrade. Even if it doesn't look like it immediately. Let's talk about peace. Peace is not excitement. Peace is not fireworks. Peace is not intensity. Peace is steady, calm, grounded. It doesn't spike your adrenaline. It stabilizes your nervous system. And sometimes peace feels boring compared to urgency. But boring stability builds sustainable joy. Urgent intensity builds temporary highs. And if you've lived through intense highs before, you know they often come with intense crashes. Alignment doesn't crash. It builds. Now imagine something powerful. Imagine you say no. You choose yourself. You choose alignment. You allow space. At first, nothing happens. A few days pass, maybe a few weeks, and your mind tries to panic. See, you missed it. Now you have nothing. But instead of spiraling, you remind yourself, if it cost my peace, it was too expensive. And then something shifts. Not dramatically, not loudly, but steadily. A new opportunity appears. A new connection emerges. A new door opens. And this one doesn't require convincing. It doesn't require mental gymnastics. It doesn't require you to shrink. It meets you where you are. That is how alignment arrives. Not rushed, not forced, but reciprocal. You are not choosing emptiness by walking away from almost. You are choosing integrity, and integrity compounds. Every time you honor your discernment, you strengthen it. Every time you trust your hesitation, you sharpen it. Every time you refuse urgency, you increase your self-trust. And self-trust is magnetic. It changes how you walk into rooms. It changes how you negotiate. It changes how you love. It changes how you receive. Because now you are not operating from fear of missing out. You are operating from certainty of worth. Let's be very clear about something. You are not being asked to reject opportunity. You are being asked to reject misalignment. You are not being told to avoid growth. You are being reminded not to confuse pressure with destiny. If something is truly yours, it will align with your evolution. It will not ask you to abandon yourself. It will not make you feel smaller. It will not demand silence from your intuition. It will feel like expansion without self-betrayal. And when you experience that, you will know the difference instantly. Because there will be no internal war, no bargaining, no overthinking. Just clarity. Clarity doesn't shout, it settles. So here is the choice in front of you. Urgency or peace, almost or aligned. Pressure or patience. Relief or integrity. Only one of those builds a future you won't have to recover from. You are not behind. You are being refined. You are not losing opportunities. You are filtering them. You are not afraid. You are discerning. And sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to do nothing, to wait, to observe, to trust. Because what is meant for you does not require you to chase it in panic. It will arrive in alignment, and when it does, you won't feel confused. You won't feel pressured. You won't feel like you're convincing yourself. You will feel steady, grounded, certain, and deeply at peace. In the final section, we're going to step into what happens after you choose alignment, how divine replacement works, how peace confirms your decision, and why what's coming next will make this moment of hesitation make perfect sense. Section 5, Divine Replacement, Peace as Confirmation, and the quiet arrival of what's meant for you. Now we come to the part most people never talk about. What happens after you choose alignment? What happens after you say no? What happens after you walk away from almost? At first, nothing dramatic, no fireworks, no instant reward, no loud confirmation. Just space, silence, and maybe a brief wave of doubt. Your mind might whisper, "Did I overthink it? Was I too cautious? Did I just miss something important?" This is normal, because when you break an old pattern, your nervous system feels unfamiliar territory. You are used to urgency, used to intensity, used to chasing resolution. But now you've chosen stillness, and stillness can feel like loss before it feels like protection. But here is the truth that only becomes clear later. When you choose alignment, replacement begins. Not revenge, not punishment, not emptiness. Replacement. Divine replacement doesn't look dramatic at first. It looks like redirection. It looks like a door quietly closing so another can open without collision. It looks like space being cleared so something solid can land. And this is where trust deepens, because divine replacement doesn't operate on your timeline of relief. It operates on your timeline of readiness. You weren't being denied. You were being positioned. Think about it this way. If you had said yes to something misaligned, your time, energy, and attention would have been occupied. And what's meant for you cannot enter fully. If you are entangled with almost, you would have been busy managing something that required compromise, busy maintaining something that required justification, busy convincing yourself it was enough. But now, you are available, and availability is powerful. The moment you say no to misalignment, you send a signal. I trust that what's meant for me is better than what's in front of me. That signal changes everything. Not externally first, internally. Your posture shifts. Your energy shifts. Your standards lock in. You are no longer negotiating with yourself. You are no longer wavering. You are anchored. And peace becomes your confirmation. Let's talk about that peace. Peace doesn't always arrive immediately. Sometimes it comes in waves. At first, there may be discomfort. Your ego might feel bruised. Your attachment might feel unsettled. Your habits might feel disrupted. But beneath all that surface noise, something stabilizes. You sleep deeper. Your chest feels lighter. You stop replaying scenarios. You stop drafting imaginary explanations. You stop needing to defend your choice. That quiet steadiness, that's confirmation, not applause, not validation from others, but internal agreement. Your mind and your intuition are no longer at war, and that harmony is sacred. Now here's something profound. When you walk away from almost, you don't just create space externally. You elevate internally. You prove to yourself that you will not abandon your peace for possibility. You show your nervous system that safety does not require compromise. You reinforce the belief that your intuition matters, and the more you reinforce that belief, the clearer your life becomes. Because clarity attracts clarity. Confidence attracts consistency. Self-trust attracts aligned connection. Divine replacement is not about something better arriving instantly. It's about you becoming the version of yourself that only entertains better. You have upgraded your baseline. And when your baseline upgrades, your reality follows. Let's paint a picture. Weeks pass, maybe even a couple of months, and something new begins to form. Not rushed, not pressured, not urgent, just steady. A conversation that feels natural. An opportunity that feels structured. An offer that doesn't require persuasion. A connection that respects your pace. And the most surprising part, it feels calm. No adrenaline spikes. No obsessive thinking. No bargaining, just alignment. And you realize something quietly. Oh, this is what it was supposed to feel like. No confusion, no mental gymnastics, no internal debates, just mutual clarity. And suddenly, the thing you almost chose feels smaller in comparison. Not because it was terrible, but because it was incomplete. You weren't wrong for being tempted. You were human, but you were wise enough to wait. That wisdom is what allowed replacement to occur. Let's talk about divine timing. Divine timing is not about delay. It's about precision. If something had entered your life too early, you might have mishandled it. If something had entered while you were still tolerating almost, you might not have recognized its value. But now, you recognize alignment instantly, because you know what misalignment feels like. You chose patience over panic, and patience refines perception. Now, peace becomes your filter. You no longer chase intensity. You measure by steadiness. You no longer ask, "Is this exciting?" You ask, "Is this sustainable?" You no longer fear missing out. You trust that what passes you by was never calibrated for you. That level of trust changes your entire frequency. And here's the quiet miracle. When you stop chasing what's not meant for you, what is meant for you stops running. It meets you. Not halfway in chaos, but fully in clarity. There's also something deeper happening. Every time you choose alignment, you break generational and personal patterns. Maybe you come from cycles of settling. Maybe you watched relationships built on compromise. Maybe you were taught to accept less to avoid being alone. But you disrupted that pattern. You said, "No more almost." That decision echoes beyond this moment. It reshapes your future. It reshapes the quality of what enters your life. Because standards are not walls. They are invitations. They invite what matches them and repel what doesn't. Now let's address the final doubt that sometimes lingers. What if nothing better comes? That fear is rooted in scarcity. But scarcity dissolves when you operate from worth. There are billions of opportunities, billions of connections, billions of timelines. You are not competing for one. You are aligning with yours, and alignment cannot miss you. It may take time. It may require patience, but it does not bypass those who trust themselves. You didn't lose anything by walking away. You protected your trajectory. You preserved your peace. You honored your evolution. And that matters more than temporary relief ever could. There is a quiet strength that develops after you choose yourself. You stop explaining your standards. You stop apologizing for your pace. You stop shrinking to make options fit. You become selective, intentional, grounded. And the irony, that grounded energy attracts faster than urgency ever did, because desperation repels, but calm certainty magnetizes. Now imagine yourself 1 year from now. You're in something stable, something reciprocal, something aligned. And you look back at this moment. The hesitation, the confusion, the temptation to settle. And you feel gratitude. Because if you had chosen almost, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be this peaceful. You wouldn't be this certain. The fog you experienced was not confusion. It was refinement. The hesitation was not fear. It was protection. The silence after walking away was not emptiness. It was preparation. And now, as this chapter closes, notice something within yourself. You feel steadier than when this message began. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust yourself more. That trust is the breakthrough. Divine replacement is not dramatic. It is precise. It arrives when your standards and your self-trust align. And when it does, it won't need to convince you. It will feel like recognition. Like coming home to something you didn't have to chase. And the most beautiful part, you will not feel anxious about losing it. Because what is aligned does not create fear of collapse. It creates stability. So breathe. You are not missing out. You are being calibrated. You are not behind. You are being refined. You are not alone in the waiting. You are being positioned. And what is meant for you will not require you to abandon yourself to receive it. It will meet you in peace. And when it does, you will understand why this moment, this hesitation, this pause, this choice was necessary. Until then, stay steady. Choose alignment. Trust the quiet. Because sometimes the most powerful confirmation is peace.